The young man Valkian was working somewhere in the northern kingdom when, all of a sudden, a bunch of friends showed up to tease him, claiming that Valkian was not allowed to live in this village and that they would send him away today on behalf of everyone. They used magic to assault Valkian, but they were so weak that he simply needed to use his fists to knock them down. Despite casting spells at him, they were all defeated by him shortly after. They were being beaten, but they showed no fear, continuing to provoke Vulcan, saying that he was too inadequate when being taught low-quality magic by an amateur master. This prompted Valkian to aggressively grab that guy by the neck and lift him. That man should not have insulted Valkian's master. Valkian was about to battle that boy again when Valkian's master entered and asked where his lunch was, so Valkian quickly freed that boy and prepared lunch for his master, after which the master inquired about Valkian's training. Valkian exceeded the quota and expected to be praised, but instead received a curse from his master, who remarked that students should not act arbitrarily. The master immediately calmed himself, realizing that it made no difference because Valkian would be picked as a sacrifice for the gate to hell. This village existed to prevent the flames of hell from spreading out, which were now slowly going out of control, and it was essential to sacrifice a young mage to prevent this from happening. Valkian was selected for two reasons. The first was that he had no relatives, and the second was that he was not a native of the village. The master prompted Valkian to get ready to approach the gate of hell tomorrow morning, while Valkian stood there frozen, aware that he would pass away the next day. But Valkian had no fear. His life had been a long sequence of days without family and friends, and it would have ended a long time ago if it hadn't been for his master's assistance. Now was the time for him to repay. The following morning, the master took Valkian to the gate to hell. Valkian entered with a smile on his face, bowed to his master once more, and then entered the door. He didn't blame his master at all. In fact, he was really grateful. Nothing was within, giving Valkian the belief that he had been tricked. However, shortly after, Valkian's entire body began to heat up, and the flame started burning both his soul and body. Valkian yelled in pain because the pain was far worse than he had anticipated. Despite the fact that his body had already burned to ashes, leaving only his soul, the pain had not yet ended. Valkian had no idea how long it had been, but the fire had continued to smolder and the suffering had not stopped. Valkian believed he would pass out in a matter of minutes, but he managed to adjust to this hellfire and the heat of the flames, and as a result, there was no longer any agony. Because he was becoming bored sitting still, Valkian decided to explore this area. Valkian flew up to investigate a hole in the fire as he spotted it and saw there were all kinds of multicolored fires there. Then Valkian found a gem amid the flames. He had just picked it up when his soul promptly absorbed it. He soon understood that the other flames contained gems identical to those in the flames, and the flame of hell was put out as soon as Valkian absorbed all of the gems it contained. Happy, he wanted to hurry back and tell his master, but he forgot that his body had vanished. Suddenly, at this time, his body was reborn, possibly because he had previously been taken into the fire of hell. Valkian broke down in tears of delight. He was prepared to accept death and had never anticipated being able to continue alive. Stepping outside the door, Valkian felt as though he was somewhere else. He had to find his way back even though he had no idea where he was. Earlier, as Valkian was staring up from the gate, a bunch of bandits sped past him. He hurriedly pursued them and asked for directions, and when he finally caught up with them, he discovered that they were encircling two females. However, Valkian didn't seem to care and ran to ask for directions. A bandit was enraged when he saw Valkian running around naked like a pervert, so the bandit immediately dispatched a killer to kill Valkian. In an attempt to ask a bandit for directions but failing, Valkian knocked the man to the ground and took his clothes. After the bandits saw this, they rushed up to fight Valkian. He tried to stop them but was unable to, thus he ended up defeating them all. After wiping them all out, he made his way back alone. Valkian saw two females who had just been surrounded by them and went to ask for directions, but was almost sliced. Aishira didn't care what Valkian wanted, but as the princess's bodyguard, she had to stop Valkian from hurting the princess. Aishira naturally confessed without being asked, and she even wanted to kill Valkian, which irritated him, so he fled swiftly before she attacked him again. The bandit suddenly jumped up and raced to assault the princess. Seeing the beauty about to die in front of his eyes, Valkian was unwilling to allow that to happen, so he hurried to stand in front of her. The princess would perish if he parried the blow, but at that precise moment, Valkian's body moved on its own to reach out and support the sword, and instantly a flame erupted to drive the bandit away. Aishira and the princess gasped in shock as they saw Valkian's body enveloped in flames. They knew right away that this was Hellfire, while Valkian couldn't believe he could control this flame. Aishira was certain that this was the northern tribe's rendition of Hellfire, but since no one had yet learned to manage it, what she was seeing was extremely unusual. The bandit found Valkian's appearance to be too frightening and fled, as Valkian stayed there dumbfounded. Valkian recognized the earlier sensation as Hellfire, and the reason he was able to control it must have been due to the stones he had taken. Aishira suddenly thrust her blade into Valkian's neck, compelling him to explain how he could use Hellfire. However, Valkian didn't know why, and he was even attempting to ask them back. The princess abruptly smacked Aishira in the mouth, claiming that this was disrespectful of their life-saving benefactor, and then she formally identified herself as Prima, the seventh princess of the White Kingdom. After that, the princess made Aishira apologize to Valkian, which infuriated Aishira. After seeing Valkian's might, Prima made a deal with him. She would want to have him serve as her bodyguard. Aishira was shocked by this, which she strongly opposed, but Prima had already predicted that they needed a powerful person to protect them because the bandits would return to seek them nonetheless. As a result, Prima pleaded with Valkian to help them. Valkian had to decline, despite how much he wanted to, because he had just come back from the dead and possessed the ability to absorb hell's fire. Therefore, he had to go back and tell his master. Upon seeing Valkian reject the princess's offer, Aishira sprang to grasp Valkian by the neck to remind him that the princess's request was absolutely not to be denied. Hence, Prima had to make an effort to separate this epileptic girl. After hearing what Valkian said, Prima feared that she had something really unpleasant to tell him. They were in fact in the northern region, but Valkian didn't believe it because he had never seen a forest like this. Aishira also confirmed that the princess was true in what she had said, that the area in which they were standing had once been a village in the northern region. However, everyone who had lived here had already died. To be more precise, they passed away 1,000 years ago. This astonished Valkian, who wondered what the heck they were talking about, and Valkian's second magnificent life was extinguished in a moment. It had been thousands of years in the real world during the time Valkian endured the fire of hell and roamed inside. Valkian couldn't believe it, and Aishira didn't trust Valkian's story either, because no one had ever survived the gate of hell. Prima then consoled Valkian, but he wasn't even upset. When he thought about how the villagers didn't treat him well, only his master did, and how now that they were all dead, it didn't matter to him, Valkian himself questioned why he didn't feel anything. Valkian breathed a sigh of relief. Since his master had already died, he wouldn't have any troubles. Therefore, Valkian decided to accept an offer to become the princess's bodyguard if she hadn't changed her mind. There was one more reason for Valkian to accept the offer. He had never left the village from childhood to adulthood, and now was the time for him to see the wonderful world out there. They all left the deep forest right away after coming to an agreement. Valkian used his hellfire powers to burn the entire impediment, which caused Aishira and Prima to think what a ridiculous thing he was doing. Valkian didn't seem to mind, though, since he was only extending his tendons and trying to practice managing this fire. He walked, thinking he had no idea what the heck was wrong with him. Hearing that the master had died yet, Valkian didn't seem upset. Had he turned into a heartless person? After an hour of traveling and still not seeing the exit, Valkian went to the princess curiously, but she didn't know either. They had been hunted and had to flee into the forest. This was Valkian's first time leaving the town, so he didn't know the way. As far as Prima knew, this forest was a forest of magicians, making it impossible to use a compass here and requiring them to discover their way out on their own. Valkian then climbed up a tree to determine the direction and looked around for a while, but he couldn't see the forest's edge anywhere. At this point, Valkian was out of his element. He happened to see a house without knowing if anyone was inside, yet he still remembered clearly that it was his. Valkian led the group to the front of the old house, and until then, he was certain it was his house. But how could it have survived after thousands of years? His master must have set a spell on the house. Prima could see that Valkian's master wished for him to come back, but Valkian didn't agree, arguing that no one would expect him to do so after being sacrificed to Hellfire. Aishira offered to examine the house first since Valkian didn't seem certain about it, but Prima stopped her because she wanted to let the owner, Valkian, go inside, and they would wait outside for him. Observing their shyness made Valkian laugh, but not because Prima was shy. Rather, she knew Valkian had a twist in his heart. The answer was probably inside that house, which was why Valkian needed to go there in order to solve the mystery in his heart. Once he had, Valkian would have no more issues and be prepared to follow them on a new journey. Entering the house, which attracted Valkien's eye, was a rather shabby scene. On the surface, it appeared to be brand new, but 1,000 years had gone, and this place was chaotic and filthy. Valkien walked over to the kitchen where he used to cook, and the memories that came flooding back made him giggle. In the past, if Valkien cooked burned food, he would immediately receive a blow to the head from his master, and in the end, he never received any praise from him. Valkien stood there dumbfounded, wondering why his master hadn't stopped him earlier. Suddenly, a plate fell and frightened him. Valkien turned around and discovered a book, which was his master's diary. Even though it was a bit rude to read other people's diaries, Valkien did so out of curiosity. On the first page of the diary, he could see that his master regretted not being able to save him. Standing before the council of elders at that time, the master attempted to reject their offer, but they concluded that Valkien would have to be sacrificed because he didn't have relatives and had some bad behaviors with the village's youngsters. Only then did his master understand that they had already decided to sacrifice his disciple's life. They had made up their minds, and there was no way he could save Valkien. The final page of his diary was blurred with tears. Valkien realized he was wrong to blame his master because his master didn't abandon him and even sought to protect him. The master did everything he could to save Valkien till the very end, and the entire diary was about Valkien, the student he adored the most. Thought it was over, but then unexpectedly, Valkien found one more hidden page. After reading his master's diary, Valkien started digging through the old objects, all of which were magical tools that Valkien had constructed for his master. At the time, he wasn't sure what to do with such items, so he gave them to his master at the moment of their parting. After some searching, Valkien eventually found the full set of chaotic magic equipment that the master had left for him. Even though Valkien had entered the gate of Hellfire at that time, the master secretly clung to the hope that one day Valkien would come back because shamans always created miracles and had no self-imposed limitations. The master had faith in Valkien, even though everyone else believed that he had passed away. He was confident that Valkien would return one day, and until then, Valkien would have the opportunity to discover the beautiful world out there, which he had never done. He would also be able to make friends who had never existed in this village and live a new life of freedom, like real men. After finishing the diary, Valkien was moved. He then put on the chaotic magical equipment kit that his master had left behind before going outside to meet Aishira and Prima and apologizing for making them wait so long. Valkien looked much cooler in his new clothes, which made Aishira giggle and enjoy Valkiena's company. At least he didn't appear like a beggar anymore. Then Valkien thanked Prima for her friendliness in relieving him of his pressure. He had resolved everything, and thus there were no longer any issues in this village. With a big smile, Prima asked Valkien once more whether he would like to be her bodyguard. This time, Valkien accepted without hesitation. Aishira became furious with Valkien for being close to the princess and was about to punch him when the house suddenly collapsed. This was because the master had already granted his last wish, which was just to wait for Valkien to return. Now that Valkien was back and prepared to turn a new page in his life, he bowed down one final time to thank his master for everything before they started setting off. 3 people made up the group: the 7th princesses of the White Kingdom, Aishira, a perverted knight, and Valkien, a bastard who had just returned after 1,000 years. An adventure lay ahead of them, but first, they had to find a way out of the forest. After some time of walking, they realized that the enormous wild boar was pursuing them all. Aishira took the princess in her arms and fled because they would all die if they were struck by the wild boar. At this moment, Valkien appeared and punched the wild boar with hellfire, instantly burning it to ashes. Aishira raced over to reproach the Valkien, warning him to use fire with caution and not let it reach the princess. Looking back at the earlier fist of fire, Valkien realized that he had actually reacted a little ridiculously, possibly as a result of the thrill of being able to combat such a massive enemy. He thus reminded himself to pay attention afterward. Prima was so terrified of the forest that she was unsure of when she would be able to leave. At this precise point, Valkien questioned how silly it was that a princess would just run into the woods. Prima understood that she shouldn't keep her reasons from Valkien because he was her protector, and Valkien had the right to know. The princess then explained everything to Valkien, saying that there had been a coup in the White Kingdom because the present monarch was critically ill. Prima's brother planned to kill her, so she had to flee in that way, and that as she spoke, her eyes welled up with tears. She didn't want to fight for the crown with her brother, so why did he want to pursue and kill her like that? When Valkien noticed Prima was upset, he immediately told her there was no need to be concerned because she would now have a new life. He counseled her to put aside all of her misery and start enjoying the new journey. Aishira got angry after she saw Valkian flirting with the princess again and told him that instead of flirting with the princess, he should find a way out of the forest. Valkian had already given this some thought because he recalled that his master had previously taught him a spell to prevent being lost. He then concentrated his mind, envisioned everything that needed to be done, and then created a directed arrow, which they could simply follow to leave the forest. However, a herd of goblins was just approaching them. These goblins were weak when traveling alone but strong when traveling in a group. Valkian wanted to deal with them but was held back by Aishira, who didn't want Valkian to handle everything because she was also the princess's bodyguard after all. Aishira hurried forward to confront the goblins so Valkian could stand back and watch, but Valkian suddenly had the thought of going up to fight over the goblins with Aishira as she was battling because these goblins worked better together than she imagined. Valkian wanted to try a new trick, and Aishira was perplexed. However, no matter what Valkian did, Aishira had to remind Valkian not to use Hellfire because it might harm the princess. Valkian laughed, advising Aishira not to worry. All he needed to do now was control this fire, which would be impossible to achieve on his own, so he would utilize magic. Valkian started to exert the power of flames, which caused the goblins and Aishira to turn pale from the heat. Aishira believed Valkian couldn't control the flames, but Valkian was confident and focused on the idea of controlling flames similarly to controlling magic. He had to imagine and transform it into his new spell, he couldn't release it like this. As soon as Valkian narrowed his focus to his fist, he invented a new move known as the Fire Fist. The moment Valkian finally succeeded, he eagerly went back to the princess to demonstrate it. Valkian hurried to attack the goblin, moving so quickly that Aishira paled, wondering how Valkian could move so quickly. The goblin was burned to charcoal by Valkian after only a single strike, leaving only one goblin alive. After that, Valkian turned to tell the other goblin to stop moving if it didn't want to die from burns like his companion. The second goblin was enraged and rushed to aim for the princess since it knew it couldn't defeat Valkian. However, it was impossible because Aishira was constantly standing alongside Prima. She cut across the goblin's chest and swore that no one could touch Prima as long as she was alive. Valkian also raced to control the goblin, declaring that those who were disobedient, such as this goblin, did not deserve to live any longer, and then killing it promptly. Even though Valkian did manage to defeat the goblin, he was not at all pleased. He realized that it had taken him too long to simply eliminate the goblins who were crippled and that he had taken too long to focus the flames on his fists while he had no idea when the goblins would attack. If his master had seen this, he would have been severely punished. Then they all walked out of the forest together, and thanks to the arrow pointing the way, they were able to quickly get out. Standing on a high cliff, Prima was delighted to see a village in the distance. Valkian's eyes lit up as well. It was the first time he had left the hamlet, and he was excited to see what would happen out there. As it was about to get dark, the group hurried to that village in search of a place to spend the night. However, when they got there, the innkeeper insisted on not renting them rooms, not because they lacked money but because he thought they were too suspicious to let them rent for fear of being implicated. Prima was dressed so opulently that the fool could immediately tell who they were. Since Aishira was a knight and couldn't lie, Valkian had to speak on her behalf and beg the owner to give them some food while giving the assurance that they wouldn't bother him again once they had eaten. The owner agreed to their request, and after giving them some food, they dejectedly went outside, fearing that they would have to spend the night outside once more. Prima was bored but had to pretend she was fine. She quickly slept off, and Aishira was so terrified that she ran over to see whether the princess was okay. An old woman approached them and said that if they continued sleeping outside like that, they would not be able to stand it. Also, when it grew dark outside, there would be numerous orcs and goblins ready to attack them at any time. Therefore, the woman offered them to sleep in her house. Valkian, who was relieved that there were still good people in the world, nodded in agreement right away and escorted the group to the house of the elderly woman. The old lady prepared for them a room, and although there wasn't much inside, her home was a shop, not an inn. It was still preferable to sleep in a bed. Aishira started mentioning the price, but the old woman declined, telling them to feel free to rest and view this as her generosity. There was nothing to be concerned about. Aishira exhaled in relief when the elderly woman left, feeling thankful that there was no need to spend too much money there. However, the princess strongly objected, saying that she couldn't bear to accept the elderly woman's generosity for nothing in return. As a result, she asked Valkian to open the bag to check for a gift to repay the favor. A brand new set of armor caught Valkien's attention, but Aishira rushed over to take it. It was a present Prima gave Aishira, one that couldn't be given to anyone else, and when Prima shouted, Aishira was heartbroken to let it go. They had to get to the Jade Kingdom as soon as they could because, since it was an island in the midst of the sea, they would no longer be pursued by the others once they arrived. Hearing about the sea made Valkien's eyes light up, and the more he traveled, the more he discovered. Valkien volunteered to go when he heard that the princess was going to go out and buy something to give the elderly woman in exchange, but he forgot to get their measurements for some new clothing. As soon as he turned back, he noticed that they were dozing off. Not wanting to wake them, Valkien discreetly removed their clothes and measured them. As the old woman at the store noticed Valkien holding a bag and preparing to leave, she became curious and inquired where he was going. Once she learned that Valkien intended to go outside and buy stuff, she stopped him, stating that no stores were open at this time. This left Valkien disappointed, and he decided to go out for a visit. Seeing that Valkien was going to buy clothes for the girls, the elderly woman did not hesitate and pointed towards her old wardrobe, inviting him to feel free to choose some items there. As a result, Valkien gave the elderly woman Aishira's armor right away, as if to thank her for letting them sleep over. However, the elderly woman sighed and quickly rejected it, and Valkien was determined to make her accept it because it was she who had advised him to accept other people's kindness. Because the woman saw Valkien grinning so brightly, she decided to look at the armor first, as she did not want to upset him. However, even after struggling for a while, she decided not to accept it because it was wholly mithril armor and it was even genuine. The market price of 20 platinum coins couldn't even buy this. She didn't dare accept such a luxurious gift. Valkien realized what she meant right away. He reasoned that if she didn't dare take it because it was an expensive item, he would just have to make it trivial. He grabbed the armor and hurled it into the air before throwing a punch to damage it. He then gave the old woman a broad smile, stating that the good armor had been dented so she could take it. The old woman was speechless. The armor was so good yet he didn't hesitate to destroy it, and she couldn't help but laugh at Valkien's frankness. Finally, she made up her mind to accept this present, pay them 100 big gold pieces, and provide his group with the gear they would need for their journey in return for Valkien's enthusiasm. The next morning, Prima and Aishira put on new clothing, joyfully showing them off to Valkien. Then the old woman turned to commend Valkien on his wonderful selection of clothes that fit their physique. Valkien claimed it was simple because he already knew their measurements, which astonished Prima and Aishira. Valkien also revealed openly that he didn't want to disturb their sleep, so he undressed them himself. This angered Aishira, who grabbed her sword and proceeded to assault Valkien. However, the innkeeper went over to the elderly woman at that point. He knew she had brought the Valkien back the day before and was relieved that the old woman's wicked heart had now been opened. Having said goodbye to the old woman, the party moved on. As they were moving along, Valkien again apologized to the two of them, but to no avail, which perplexed him and made him question why they had been so annoyed when he had first seen them naked. He had been looking forward to this excursion, but it was now so gloomy that Valkien employed magic to place two kangs under his feet. Seeing Valkien utilize his new magic piqued the other two's interest, and he explained that it was a spell his master had taught him to use to train and build muscle mass and stamina for his body. As soon as Valkien noticed that Aishira appeared interested, he encouraged her to try it out. Aishira laughed out loud and responded that if this was the source of Valkien's powers, then she too would like to try it. Shortly after Aishira placed the kangs on her legs, she immediately lost her balance, bracing herself but unable to stand. This caused Aishira to get pale all over and wonder how in the world anyone could carry this weight. Aishira was about to lose her endurance, so Valkien had to relieve her. Prima exclaimed that she was attracted to Valkien's power and hadn't expected it to be utilized for so many different purposes. Prima wished to try it as well, but Aishira firmly refused. Upon observing their delight, Valkien dared to sigh of relief because it appeared that they had forgotten their anger toward him. Aishira then asked Valkien, who already knew so many spells, if he could use any spell to help them move faster, but Valkien couldn't. Aishira had to think of a new strategy. If they kept traveling at this rate, the assassins would eventually catch up with them. Therefore, she urged everyone to rush to the next village, where they could hire a few horses to move. Valkien, on the other hand, disliked riding horses and preferred to stroll in order to observe the world. He assured Aishira that if anyone showed up, he would take that person down. Aishira was aware of Valkien's strength and that he could handle the weaker men, but if the Angel Church sent out pursuers, they wouldn't be able to fend off them. Prima grew pale at the mention of it and assumed they wouldn't get that far. Aishira had to think the worst, though. She thought Prima's brother would do everything to get rid of Prima. Then Valkian became interested in the so-called angel church that Aishira had stated. It was a transnational organization tasked with keeping watch over the Seven Kingdoms. As a result, Valkian laughed so much, anticipating seeing the angel, while Aishira wasn't looking forward to it at all. She even warned Valkian that if they met them in person, the only thing they could do was flee because those angels possessed amazing power. Additionally, they were natural foes of magicians, as it was them who had destroyed Valkian's hamlet 1,000 years ago. Valkian was taken aback because he expected the wizards to fade away over time, not to be destroyed. Meanwhile, at the Cathedral of the Angels, the High Angel Zuriel got a slew of requests from humans, but he was more interested in killing Prima. A big man was walking towards the White Kingdom when two thugs shamelessly blocked the road to collect insurance money. They did this because there were no patrols present along the route as the White Nation was now engaged in a power struggle. The overweight guy yawned, not expecting to be tormented by two mediocre individuals. This enraged two thugs, who hit the fat guy, unaware that they had messed with the wrong person. On Valkian's side, Priam was excited to have roasted snake meat for the first time. She then offered Valkian a piece of the meat because, previously, when it was revealed that angels had killed magicians, Valkian seemed to be a little depressed. However, he rapidly recovered his spirits because, after all, 1,000 years had passed. Valkian couldn't do anything, but he didn't hate the angels because he had promised his master that he would live a happy, free life, and it would be better if he was happy rather than miserable. Aishira discovered a vast city at the time, and while there, a thug was slaughtered by the fat man. The other begged the big man to spare his life, but the fat guy did not care. For the benefit of the White Kingdom, the fat guy had the responsibility of murdering inferior individuals like these two thugs. But, more importantly, the big guy enjoyed his task. If it was too easy, it wouldn't be entertaining because these two thugs showed little resistance. The other thug was too terrified to flee but couldn't. The obese guy was bored, wondering whether there was nothing worthy of him, but then he remembered the mission that the angel Zuriel had just assigned him, to kill Prima, the sanctuary of the angel church. It was in the midst of the world that they observed 7 kingdoms. They were a far bigger existence than mankind, and of the 7 kingdoms they witnessed, they were the rules that the kingdoms had to follow. They might sometimes take human requests, but the cost was high. The big guy was delighted to meet Prima. Valkian was overwhelmed when he first entered the city, since it was so massive. He joyfully rushed around, taking in the lovely landscape, but was stopped by Aishira because they needed to find a place for some rest first. Prima and Aishira moved first, and Valkian tried to keep up, but the city was so crowded that he had already lost them. Unable to figure out how to find them at this point, and with his stomach growling incessantly, Valkian made the decision to get food instead. Valkian smelled a very delicious perfume at this time and walked to a bakery. The lovely proprietor greeted Valkian and introduced him to walnut bread. The scent flowing from it was so fragrant that Valkian did not hesitate to taste it. Then he exclaimed about how amazing this bread was, which delighted the attractive owner because someone had just praised her cake as mouthwatering even though she hadn't yet sold any. Valkian was a little taken aback by this because the cake was so good, but no one seemed to want to buy it. He was enjoying the cake when a group of people abruptly interrupted him. They hadn't come to buy cake, but rather to hang out with the owner, Bella. In addition, they had badly mistreated Bella. She brushed their hands away aggressively as they threw the table away and teased Bella that she shouldn't sell cakes anymore because no one wanted to buy them. Valkian now understood why no one came to buy Bella's cakes, but Bella insisted very firmly that she would be back tomorrow regardless of what they did. Then Valkian went over to help Bella pick up the cake, and he didn't hesitate to eat the cake that had just fallen on the ground in front of them with a lovely compliment. This made Bella very emotional, as she thanked Valkian for believing in her. Valkian simply grinned since Bella's cake was really yummy and he didn't care what the others thought or said, stating he hoped he could eat more of her cakes. The thugs were enraged when they saw Valkian and Bella having fun together, so the leader instructed someone to deal with Valkian. However, just then, Aishira walked up behind them. Annoyed, they turned around and tried to hit Aishira just as she punched them on the spot. Valkian could not escape being beaten and could only apologize to Aishira because his job was to protect the princess, but he went out and left the princess behind. The princess and Bella tried to ask for help from Valkian. After all, Valkian helped her escape those gangsters. Valkian continued to apologize to Prima, but she immediately forgave Valkian, just reminding him to pay more attention next time. At this moment, there was a rumbling sound. Aishira thought it was Valkien's voice and rushed to grab him by the neck to question him. It wasn't Prima's stomach growling, she was very hungry, and seeing that, Bella immediately invited them to her bakery instead as a thank you for Valkien helping her. The group quickly followed Bella to the bakery. The baker saw Bella returning with a boy, shocking them, thinking Valkien was Bella's boyfriend. They rushed in and wanted to question him, but luckily Bella stopped them. After explaining to her uncle, Bella brought out cake to invite them. Prima and Aishira enjoyed this cake and all praised it as delicious. The filling of the cake is very special, and only Bella's uncle can make it. Above all, the customers present in the store all love him, reminding him to take better care of himself. Because his happy bakery is the treasure of this whole city, no other bakery can make a better cake than this one. Bella shares a little with Valkien. One day she also wants to become someone like her uncle who can also make delicious cakes that make everyone happy. Above all, Bella wants to repay her uncle. She is a child who was abandoned when she was a baby and was adopted by her uncle and loved as if she were her own child. That's why Bella tried so hard to learn baking even though she wasn't good at it. Valkien laughed and encouraged Bella not to be sad, that trying for her own dreams is not wrong. Valkien then ran into the kitchen to help Bella and Auntie as a thank you. After that, the Valkien group was allowed to stay overnight by their uncle and aunt for the night. Bella went out to clean up in front of the shop. Valkien's words of encouragement made her feel much better. She determined that starting tomorrow, she would try her best to pursue her dream. Suddenly Bella discovered a feather on the ground, belonging to the fat angel. He had already found Prima's location, but he felt that this city was too stinky. He didn't want to go down there at all, so he decided that instead of going down to check, he would destroy the city and force Prima to come out himself to save him the trouble of searching. Inside the Valkien store, he was startled and felt something very dangerous was coming. Outside the store, Bella discovered the fat angel. He chose to attack Bella as the opening act. Valkien quickly reminded Aishira to protect the princess so he could go out and deal with him. The fat angel shot straight at Bella. Fortunately, Valkien was able to protect her in time, so she was saved. But this one attack from the fat angel turned the street corner into nothingness. Valkien quickly turned to see if the other two mothers were okay, but only saw them sweating. Prima couldn't believe there was actually an angel chasing her. The fat angel quickly landed in front of them. He intended to bombard a few more places, but Prima had already appeared, so there was no need. He introduced himself as Mori, the 12th angel of the Angel Church, coming here with the mission to destroy Prima at the request of the White Continent. So this is the Star Angel. Valkien looked at him bewilderedly. Suddenly there was a scream. Everyone was rushing to save Bella's uncle. The fat angel's recent attack caused a wooden stick to pierce his stomach. Seeing Bella screaming in pain made Valkien very angry. And Aishira was now ready to fight, blaming herself for being too subjective. She should have always been on guard, but now that the angel had found her, it was too late for them to run away. Aishira picked up her sword to fight him, but Valkien stood in front of them, surprising the fat angel. Because in the report there was no mention of Valkien going with Prima. Seeing Valkien like that made Aishira scream to remind him that, as mentioned, angels are an entity on a different level from humans. Valkien would not be able to touch him, advising Valkien to quickly run away. At this moment, she felt a murderous intent that made Aishira speechless and unable to say anything more. But this murderous aura did not come from the angel but from Valkien, the fat angel, who agreed with what Aishira had just said. Thinking that Valkien was a bit cheeky for daring to stand in front of him like that, he pulled out a spear and threw it straight at Valkien. Valkien punched that spear away and declared straight to his face, he didn't know who the hell he was from, nor did he need to know how strong he was. But just prepare yourself for the beating, because you won't forgive him. Bok Chow Kingdom is known as a jewelry kingdom, a prosperous country with the main industries being mining and gemstone processing. But the current king is seriously ill, right now in his convalescence room. The struggle for the throne takes place right here. No matter how seriously ill the king is, his children only try to show him that they are the one worthy of taking the throne. Not only the first or second princes, but the princesses also come to compete for this throne. They argued in front of the king, making him bored, so he ordered someone to call Prima inside. That made Princess Fine very angry. Even at this point, the king still only cares about Prima. As expected, ordering someone to kill Prima was the right choice. At this moment, her subordinates came to inform her. The Angel Church accepted Fine's offer and went to kill Prima. This makes Fine so happy that there is no need to worry that Prima will return, because no one is strong enough to withstand the angels. Meanwhile, Valkian burst out with the power of hell to fight the fat angel, reminding Aishira to take everyone to a safe place. You alone will deal with this fat guy. Bella came forward crying and complaining to Valkian. The happy bakery had collapsed and her uncle was also seriously injured. Bella was so scared that she would lose everything she treasured. Seeing Bella crying made Valkian even angrier, telling her there was no need to worry. No matter what came, he would not let them take away something valuable to her. Prima then quickly pulled Bella to a safe place. The fat angel heard everything Valkian had just announced and thought he was just a snout hero. He was about to attack Prima when Valkian jumped straight in front of him, which startled the fat angel. Since he was in the sky, how the hell could Valkian get here? And there was no need to worry about dealing with Valkian first and then Priam. He stabbed Valkian with the angel's spear. This is the unique power of angels that allows them to use and control light. Now don't try to escape from his spear of light. The Mori was confident in that, but Valkian immediately humiliated him. He burned through his spears and punched him straight in the face. The fat angel fell straight to the ground and turned pale. This heat was not simply fire magic. He immediately realized that this was the power of hellfire. Valkian rushed forward to give him another shot straight in the mouth. Seeing Valkian overpowering the angel made Aishira extremely surprised, unable to believe that Valkian was capable of doing that. The fat angel was beaten very hard. He was sure that what Valkian was using as hellfire was the only way he could be injured to this extent. But this is so absurd because that fire died out with the demon lord thousands of years ago. The angel was very angry and complained to God. The reason angels were created to prevent this fire. Now it is in front of him, surely this is the test God created for him. The fat angel didn't care about the things around him or what Prima did anymore, so he was forced to kill Valkian. He used all his strength to make himself even bigger, declaring to Valkian that he would be the one to finish him. Valkian doesn't care how big he becomes, he's still just a stupid fat pig. This made the fat angel angry, holding a light spear to attack Valkian. The vibrations from his attack caused other buildings to gradually collapse. Prima quickly pulled Bella away from this area, beating the fat angel while provoking Valkian, thinking that the reason he was so angry was probably because he wanted to avenge his compatriots. But history has proven that magicians have no chance with angels, so whatever Valkian does is useless. The fat angel attacked him continuously. Valkian immediately counterattacked him and corrected him. The reason he was angry was not because of his countrymen but because he had ruined the beautiful lives of innocent people out there, like the way his master once taught Valkian. Mages are good people willing to protect the things they value. Just like before, Valkian was determined not to let this fat angel take away his precious things like the way his master saved him. Valkian rushed straight in front of him and kicked him. Play as him and provoke him to chase you. Valkian led him to a mountain far away from the town. Now he could freely fight and not worry about him destroying the town and involving others. Suddenly realizing that he still hadn't introduced himself to the fat guy, Valkian took off his cloak. The third-generation magician Jatoryu promised to beat him to a pulp. Valkian raised his 2 thumbs and folded the remaining fingers except the index and middle fingers, forming his hand into the shape of a gun. Valkian then focused the flames of hell on his fingertips, pointing straight at the fat angel. You will call this move the fire bullet. Valkian opened fire and shot straight at the fat angel. This was the first time Valkian tried this move, and this fat angel was the perfect test subject. This made the fat angel very angry. He pulled out several spears of light to block the attack, very confident in the mind's abilities. In this form, no attack could penetrate his light spear. As soon as he finished speaking, several bullets punctured his light spear. The fat guy got hit, but he had already launched an attack. Above Valkian's head were 30 light spears aimed at him. This amount was enough to blow up an entire city. Now Valkian can't escape even if he runs to the district. Valkian just smiled lightly and then shot a fiery bullet at his head. All of the fat angel's light spear disappeared. This made him angry, wondering what the hell was going on. While in town, Bella's uncle was still in critical condition. Prima ran back and pushed everyone away. She could help him. Prima didn't look like someone who was very skilled in healing arts, so everyone was a little suspicious. But there's no way, Prima doesn't care what they think. Now that Valkian is trying her best to protect everyone, she must also do something to help them. The fat angel took Valkian's attack and was still able to stand. He was stronger than Valkian thought. Many of his attacks were perfect. But the heat of the fire was not as good as he expected. The fat angel rushed forward and madly attacked Valkian. First, he had to limit his vision. Valkian fired bullets straight into his eyes. Then he put all his strength into his fist, concentrating the power of the fire even thicker and hotter. At this moment, a voice rang out in Valkian's head. He chuckled, thinking that this fire was hot. But it's still not enough, and Valkian can never become its owner if he still uses such weak sparks. Kane's firepower reached a new level. He rushed forward and punched the fat angel in the mouth repeatedly. After receiving this attack, he immediately collapsed. Only now did Valkian begin to have difficulty understanding where the voice just came from. The fire that Valkian just used was completely different from the fire from before. For just a moment something spoke to him. This made Valkian a bit confused as to what the heck that thing was. The fat angel still tried to stand up and threaten Valkian. Being an angel and letting humans defeat him was a huge humiliation for him. But Valkian's peaceful days ended the moment he dared to oppose the angel. The other angels will pursue and kill Valkian. For now Valkian can just live in fear. But Valkian was not afraid. He approached the fat angel and cast magic on him, making the fat angel writhe in pain. With headaches, internal hemorrhoids, external treatment, abdominal pain, the matter ends here. Valkian ignored him writhing and quickly rushed back to the town. Because he knew the owner of the Happy Bakery was still injured, hoping his magic could help him. As soon as she arrived in front of the door, a sword appeared to attack Valkian. It was Aishira, who she thought was an angel who had just attacked. Hearing that Valkian had defeated the fat castrator made Aishira extremely surprised. Valkian ignored her and quickly ran in to see her uncle, who had already fully recovered. This was all thanks to Prima. After treating her uncle, she also went to treat other injured people. Seeing Prima's hand glowing made Valkian curious. He wanted to come and see what was going on, but Aishira held him back. Valkian angrily cast a toothache spell on Aishira and then left to find Bella. She is currently very sad because the shop is busy. Valkian feels very guilty in this matter. Because they came here, the shop was destroyed by the angel. Bella smiled and turned back to encourage Valkian. There was no need to worry that if the shop was destroyed, she would just need to rebuild a new one as long as the people she loved were okay. Seeing Bella smiling like that made Valkian less worried. Once again Bella thanks Valkian for protecting everyone. Valkian wanted Bella to clean up this mess when suddenly Valkian realized that someone was watching him. He turned around to check but didn't see anyone, making Valkian think he was being too sensitive, but the truth was that there was a girl actually watching Valkian. In the following days, Valkian and the princess helped Bella's family rebuild the shop. But they can only help so far. It's time for them to leave. Looking at Valkian's back as he left made Bella a bit sad. But when her uncle mentioned marriage, Bella was embarrassed and refused. She cannot keep someone as strong as Valkian in this small town. She must let him live the life she wants. Suddenly Valkian shouted loudly and promised to come back and enjoy Bella's cake. Hopefully between now and then she will hone her skills. Aishira sighed in frustration. The reason they came to this town was to find some people to move quickly, but in the end they still got nowhere. Prima tried to encourage her that there was no place to sell horses anymore, after being devastated like that by the angel. As for Valkian, he was very excited. It didn't matter to him whether he had a horse or not because walking like this could lead him to encounter interesting things. Valkian is looking forward to what happens next. Meanwhile at the angel church. The fat angel was beaten so badly by Valkian that he had to try very hard to drag himself back here. Currently, he is being cared for by a team of medical angels. Luckily for him, Valkian did not kill him. But his condition did not get better in a short time, as his throat was crushed by Valkian, and his body was covered with severe burns. And there were also some reasons why he encountered countless diseases such as internal hemorrhoids and external hemorrhoids, diarrhea, which made the highest angel very angry. He could not understand how an angel could fail at the hands of humans. Above all, this case was not allowed to be approved by high-ranking apostles. If they were to investigate this matter, it would be difficult for him to survive. While he was afraid, the waterbending apostle Jibril came here to question him. After treating the fat angel, Jibril realized that it was the flames of hell that had deformed him to this extent. There was a sound of laughter from the hellfire. It was the royal wind apostle Raphel. He was very interested in this, so he decided to go find Valkian and play a match. As the youngest of the 12 apostles, Raphel was very confident in his strength. And if Jibril has any doubts, just come and check. Raphel let out a gust of wind that blew away everything in the room. Meanwhile, the Valkian group was still stopping to rest, almost breaking their legs while walking but didn't encounter anything interesting. Valkian ran to the river to get some water and prepared dinner for Prima. After the encounter with that fat angel, everything returned to its original peaceful mode, but Valkian did not like this at all. While getting water from the Valkian river, he discovered someone was watching him. This gaze was different from the gaze he felt in town. In the end, what was this thing? There was no need to wait for Valkian to go in and find it. That thing automatically walked out in front of Valkian. Then I quickly ran back to tell Prima, showed her what I had just found, an extremely cute dog, and asked Prima to let me take it with me on the journey. Because it was so cute, Prima immediately agreed without having to think any further. On the contrary, Aishira strongly objected. They were going into hiding, not traveling. The angels will come at any time, at which point this dog will die unjustly. Valkian doesn't care much because no matter who comes, he will kick their ass. This made Aishira angry and told Valkian that the fat angel he defeated was just a low-level angel lying under the ass of other angels. Aishira is sure that there is a high-ranking angel chasing them, and above all, they don't have enough money to raise this dog. Another important piece of information that Aishira overheard was that in the forest there was a giant wolf. She suspected that this puppy was that wolf. Right at this moment, the puppy barked fiercely, and a giant wolf appeared right behind Aishira. Before it was Valkian's turn to act, the puppy jumped out of Prima's arms and came in front of the giant wolf. The puppy turned from a cute look into a very scary look, biting straight into the wolf's neck, killing it immediately. Seeing this scene made Valkian very surprised. Why the hell was there fire coming from that puppy's body? As for Prima, she immediately recognized that this puppy was the divine beast Amaterasu. It is the ruler of one of the 8 elements in this world. After killing that wolf, the puppy turned into a cute expression and jumped into Valkian's arms, seemingly like it liked them. This made Prima certain that fate had brought the puppy to them, so she was determined to take this puppy with her, promising Aishira that she would take good care of the puppy. So Aishira agreed to let them take the puppy with them. She went to the puppy's place just now when the wolf attacked. The puppy barked fiercely, probably to warn Aishira of danger. She recognized the dog as a member of the team. She was about to pet the dog a little when it bit Aishira's hand. And so Aishira continued to hate the puppy. Meanwhile, at the angel sanctuary, Raffle came to meet his friend, the 8th rank angel Marcel. There is something I need to ask him to solve with the magician who defeated Maafu. Raffle has heard many of his friend's brilliant achievements. Since the battle with the magicians in the past, he will definitely be interested in this. Haven't heard of this magician named Marcel for a long time. He seemed very interested and jumped in front of Raffle. Since it was an order from a superior, as a subordinate, Marcel could not refuse Raffle's request. Valkian was currently on his way to the Jade Country, so Marcel couldn't delay any longer, said goodbye to Raffle and flew out the window to hunt for Valkian immediately. It was all part of Raffle's plan. During the Great War of the past, Marcel buried countless magicians. His strength is unquestionable, but he is just a chess piece in Raffle's hands. Let Marcel go explore Valkian's strength first, and then Raffle will appear. Meanwhile, in the Valkian group, he just defeated a giant monster, so tonight they will have a hearty barbecue meal. Prima and Aishira were shocked at what Valkian had just done, because the monster he defeated was the Earth Dragon Naga. This thing would require an entire country's army to deal with it, but Valkian took it down as easily as possible. That night, Valkian stayed in the tent to grill dragon meat for everyone, not forgetting to share the food with the puppy Shira. Waiting for a long time without seeing the other 2 girls return, Valkian was very curious, not knowing which corner he had gone to play in again. Valkian plays with his puppy Shira without knowing that someone on the tree is watching him. Seeing that Valkian was caught off guard, this guy felt that the opportunity to kill him had come and pulled out a pepper tube, which was a silent killing weapon. As long as it hits, Valkian's chant is guaranteed. This guy aimed accurately and then shot. He was confident when he shot from a dead angle like this. Even the strongest person in the world cannot avoid it, but Valkian can still catch the poisonous needle. This made the assassin's face turn pale. Valkian's strength was so strong that it was not in his expectations, so he had to retreat to get more information first. But Valkian didn't let him go that easily. Valkian rushed after him, curious to see if this guy was an angel. If it's an angel, it should be aimed at Prima. Why is it aimed at you like this? The assassin swung his hand to attack Valkian. Just one blow was enough for Valkian to realize that this guy was not an angel. He is much weaker than that fat angel. For now, just arrest him and interrogate him first. Valkian used magic to create 3 demon chains to tie him up. Then he ran over to check and discovered that this was a girl, and what kind of girl has strange ears like this, making Valkian think she was cosplaying, so he sat back and played with it. Just then, Prima and Alzhera turned around and saw Valkian teasing a beast girl, making Prima very angry and picked up a tree branch to whip him repeatedly. Valkian tried to explain that it was because she attacked him first, and moreover, what a beastman was. Valkian was a bit curious. Seeing that Valkian was a bit stupid, Prima informed him that beastmen are people with animal blood flowing in their bodies. Looking at that girl, it seemed like she was a cat beast. Valkian was very surprised by this. There are really many strange things in this world. Then he ran over to ask why she was targeting him, but she seemed a bit speechless, so he let her go first. Valkian continued to grill meat for everyone, then brought her a giant piece of meat. The scent emanating from the meat made her drool all over, but she was still very determined and refused to confess. Valkian also had no choice but to threaten her. If he remained stubborn like that, he would strip off all his clothes and hang them on a tree, a punishment that his master often used in the past. Suddenly Prima approached Valkian to release her, which made Aishira strongly protest that it wasn't too dangerous. But Prima is not afraid. As long as Valkian is here, victory will still be on their side. She took the piece of meat and approached the beast girl, advising her to eat it quickly and promising not to harm her. Seeing Prima's sincerity made the beast girl let down her guard, took the piece of meat and gnawed it greedily while looking at the path she intended to run away from. But Valkian already knew about her plan. If he threatened to run away, he would break her leg. Having no choice but to surrender, she then introduced herself as Kurwan, the person hired by the kingdom to pick up Prima's body. Hearing this made the Prima burst into sad tears again. It was her brothers. Could it be that they wanted her to die that much? Kurwan had been following Prima's group for a long time, before they even hired Valkian to escort them. He intended to pick up their bodies when the angel killed them, but Valkian was too stubborn and kicked the angel back, so Kurwan had to take on the task of killing Prima. But she wanted fame more than a reward. If she could defeat the Valkian who kicked the fat angel's ass, then she wouldn't have to worry about the mission anymore. But now it's failed. Kurwan is sad. For an assassin they never have the right to fail. Now Kurwan's career was ruined. Seeing her so sad, Prima ran to hire Kurwan for the task. If her brothers hire Kurwan to pick up her body, Prima just needs to make them think she's dead. Thanks to Kurwan returning to inform them that she was dead, along with a very generous remuneration, Kurwan closed the deal immediately. So they got rid of the annoying stalker and headed straight to the White Continent. From here to there, it's very close and Valkian is a bit sad, as the journey with these two girls is about to end. Angel Marcel has landed in the human world. According to intelligence, the Valkian group in this forest needs to find the Valkian magician quickly and not return to be dealt with by Raffle. Right at this moment, he heard a scream. It was Prima cheering for Aishira to fight an orc. Valkian kept fighting but still wasn't finished, so he wanted to help a little but Prima refused to let him. Valkian always does everything, leaving Aishira without a chance to shine, so this is her time to show off. Although Valkian doesn't pay much attention to Aishira's battles, the truth is that she is very strong. Each sword stroke is very soft, cutting the opponent with perfect counterattacks. Just as the orc was about to attack Aishira, like this, by the time they parted ways, Aishira would still be able to protect Prima. Aishira defeated the orc and happily showed off to everyone, thinking that this was only a small part of her strength. It's not enough to exercise in the morning while I'm breathing heavily. Right now another new one appears. This one is much bigger than the one Alzhera just defeated. It seems like it wants revenge for its kind. Valkian asked Aishira to change shifts. He would one-hit this orc. As he was about to rush up to fight the orc, the angel Marcel landed. It's been 1,000 years since he finally met a magician in the flesh again. He couldn't stop this excitement, so he jumped up and down and pointed at Valkian, wanting to be divided with him. This makes Valkian a bit confused. This guy is stupid and already wants to fight with him as soon as he met him. While the orc was right behind him preparing to attack Prima. Aishira saw this and quickly shouted to warn him that it was dangerous, but this guy didn't care. With just one move, Marcel cut the orc into several pieces. Remind Prima and Aishira not to worry about details, because he is very strong when he unleashes his angel wings. Introducing himself as the 8th rank angel of the church, the angel Marcel once again challenged Valkian to see who was stronger. Marcel used his ultimate move, Nobita's bamboo pinwheel, then rushed to attack Valkian. He dodged slightly to the side and was able to avoid it, but the angel became even more excited. Even Valkian could dodge his ultimate technique, as expected of him as a magician of the gates of hell, and Valkian looked puzzled. This guy finally has a cold head. What the hell is he so excited about that trick just now that even a child could dodge him? Marcel continued to attack Valkian but only dodged. He suddenly realized he was only aiming at him. His target should have been Prima, right? Marcel wanted to attack again but Valkian stopped him. He had some things to ask first. Marcel also stopped to let Valkian ask. Valkian was a little curious as to why he came here to look for him. Could it be to avenge that fat angel? Marcel also denied that he came here on orders from the high-ranking angel Raffle, only to ask about Valkian first. This makes it even more difficult for Valkian to understand who the hell Raffle is. Seeing that they didn't know about Raffle made Marcel very angry, so he stopped fighting and gave them a lecture on the ranks of angels first. First, about Raffle's background, the angel church is divided into 4 levels from strong to weak. Raffle is the leader of those 4 ranks, the leader of the angels at the church with extreme fighting ability. Aishira had heard the story about the angels. In the old battle, they buried many magicians, and Marcel was also a participant in this battle. He was honored to participate in that battle, but that was still not enough to satisfy him. Fortunately, there is still one powerful magician left so he can complete his mission. Ending the lecture here, Marcel announced that he would capture Valkian back. He pulled out a bracelet from his sacred weapon. Then from there pulled out a sword and suddenly a weapon like this appeared, making Valkian think that Marcel was similar to the fat angel. But of course it's not the spear of light, it's only used by low-level angels. Marcel prepared to attack, startling Valkian, who quickly hugged Prima and Aishira to avoid the attack. This guy's attack range is unusually long, probably because of the weapon he's using. Valkian landed and lightly mentioned Marcel's name. If his target is only you, then don't involve others. Marcel also understood and apologized to Valkian, which surprised Valkian even more. He thought angels were all crazy, but this guy seemed different from that fat angel so he could comfortably compete with him. While preparing to attack, Valkian was suddenly pulled into another dimension. This feeling is exactly the same as when Valkian was in the gates of hell. A hellfire chicken came out to remind Valkian that when confronting an angel, using that dirty fire wouldn't work, so he lent Valkian his power. The firebird was very pleased to greet Valkian, introducing himself as Hinokagu, the demon king of supreme hellfire. Valkian's current opponent is not that ordinary fat angel, but a high-level angel with his own divine weapon. The opponent is very powerful, so only using Valkian's current weak fire will still be too late to defeat him. That's why Hinokagu will lend Valkian his power. As long as Valkian agrees with it, Valkian will become the strongest. Valkian immediately refused and asked Hinokagu to let him out of here. This made Hinokagu also freeze. Why the hell would Valkian refuse without thinking like that? It's completely different from the script. Hinokagu tries to remind Valkian to think again, he can make Valkian's fire stronger. But without having to exchange anything for such a good deal, he still refused. Valkian is very confident in himself so there is no need, making Hinokagu angry and curse Valkian to his face for being too shallow. The fire that Valkian was using now was only his weakest fire. If Valkian knew more about it, Valkian's power would increase greatly. Hearing it over and over again made Valkian see that this firebird was no different from any other high-class guy. Hinokagu tried to correct himself, he is currently living in Valkian's body. If Valkian died, he would chant it too, so there's no need to trick you. Hinokagu then asked Valkian if he knew the reason why he entered the hellfire without dying. Of course Valkian didn't know this, and Hinokagu didn't bother to explain Valkian's use of power. Remind Valkian to use it wisely, then when he becomes strong, Valkian will know the reason why he did not die. Returning to reality, Marcel rushed to attack Valkian. Seeing that he had just lost concentration, Marcel could not miss that opportunity. Marcel uses a technique to trap Valkian in a thorn cage. The things inside the thorn cage can never escape. But that was only for other people and not Valkian. He destroyed Marcel's thorn cage in the blink of an eye. With his new power, Valkian's hands were surrounded by the demonic energy of hell. He destroyed Marcel's aura, making him completely cross-eyed. This was impossible, so Valkian rushed forward with one punch and knocked Marcel down. This game is so easy, Valkian excitedly showed it off to everyone. Prima was a bit curious about the thing in Valkian's hand. This was the thing the firebird lent him. It really made Valkian much stronger. I plan to thank him properly next time we meet. Prima then called Aishira to look at this glove, but Aishira did not seem happy at all. As Aishira had just observed, the angel only aimed at Valkian and did not care about Prima at all. It seemed like their target had changed from the princess to Valkian. If that was true, then she felt it would be much better to just break up with Valkian here. Furthermore, Prima had also spread fake news of her own death, and no one was targeting them anymore. Valkian's work here is over. The fact that Valkian has become this strong, and defeated 2 angels of the Angel Church, surely high-ranking angels will quickly come here to arrest him. Aishira was worried that going with the princess would be in danger, so Prima fiercely refused and Valkian followed them to protect them. From what he did, Prima couldn't be that ungrateful. Deep inside Prima, Valkian is no longer an ordinary bodyguard but a teammate with whom she shares joys and sorrows. She couldn't leave Valkian behind like that. No matter how much Aishira advised her, Prima was still determined to let Valkian follow her to the final journey, at least to accompany her until she set foot in the Silver Kingdom. Valkian spoke up, interrupting Prima, "Honestly speaking, whatever you do, it's okay to break up right here." As Aishira was worried about, he had become the target of the angels. Going with him would only bring him more danger. But if Prima wants, he will still accompany her. This indifference of Valkian makes Prima very sad. For her, he has become a teammate, but for Valkian, she is just part of the mission. Prima sadly ran away before Valkian and Aishira hurriedly chased after her. Prima didn't say anything else the whole way. The tense atmosphere couldn't have gotten any better. They had finally reached the town along the coast. Aishira reminded everyone to stop and wait. There will be someone waiting for them here. As soon as they mentioned it, they suddenly appeared. She is a lieutenant general of the Army's Navy, Dr. Elisabetta. She is Aishira's friend, so Elisabetta personally came here to welcome everyone. Aishira was in a hurry and did not let Elisabetta get to know everyone but asked where the princess's boat was. The truth is that Elisabetta wanted to move the ship very soon but encountered problems. Meanwhile, in the forest, Raffle witnessed the full power of Valkian and it was time for him to act. Because the princess's boat was late, they were forced to stay in the town along the coast and have fun to relieve stress. This was Valkian's first time going to the beach. He was more excited than ever. If Valkian really jumps into the sea to play, this world still has so many beautiful things that Valkian doesn't know. At this time, Prima and Aishira had just arrived. A few hours ago, Elisabetta had explained the situation to them. The princess's ship has arrived but cannot move immediately. The navy ship outside the town supplying goods to the BS Kingdom will depart in a while. Only then can the princess sneak onto the ship, because she is an illegal immigrant, so she must board the ship silently. The goods will be arranged quickly. It is expected that tomorrow morning they will be able to move, so today Elisabetta will let everyone have fun. Seeing that the puppy Shira was hungry, Valkian asked Aishira for some money to enjoy delicious food. And wherever she refuses the princess, Valkian must stay there. He can't go out alone and leave the princess behind like this. Seeing Aishira talking too much, Prim stopped her, then confided a little with Valkian. Actually, this is the last time they can stay together. She hoped Valkian would ignore the duty of truly considering her a friend, and could enjoy this last moment together. After that, the two of them played volleyball together very happily. Playing continuously until late at night when the other two people had left, Valkian was still sitting on the beach. Shira excitedly talked about interesting things during this time. In the near future, Shira will go with the other two people, so Valkian hopes that he will live well. Suddenly Prima came to sit near Valkian. Aishira was planning to anchor with Elisabetta so she couldn't come here. While sitting, Prima mentioned the recent journey. It was really interesting and a memory that Prima will never forget for the rest of her life. Prima then mentioned Valkian's story, wondering if he would still continue his journey. Valkian burst out laughing. Of course there is. There are still so many interesting things out there in the world that Valkian doesn't know yet. Valkian plans to go on a trip around the world, and if he can return to the Kingdom of Bees. At that time, he would stay and play with Prima for a few days. At this moment, Prim became very serious and went straight to face Valkian because she had something to tell him. Prima was very curious about what he would decide if she still went with Valkian, confiding to Valkian that she had already enjoyed this journey. I like the time of living so excitedly every day when I wake up. This is the first time that Prima has experienced it. But still in Prima Castle like a bird in a cage. Every day I have to wear beautiful clothes to walk around the castle so that others can respectfully worship. Because of her status as a princess, no one dared to act rudely in front of Prima. She was very sad because she had no friends to vent her feelings to. Every day Prima has to endure the hateful looks of others. No one considers her a real princess, but just a girl in the guise of a princess. The key point is that as soon as Prima lost her title, too many enemies targeted her. At this moment, Prima cursed her own naivety and regretted her past self in despair. As a princess, other than being protected, she couldn't do anything until Valkian appeared. He is always optimistic and helps Prima overcome difficulties. Being with Valkian Prima is really exciting. But the most important thing is that Valkian is always free, not constrained by anything. Prima burst into tears and wanted to visit the beautiful world out there with Valkian. Thanks to Valkian, Prima found herself again. She didn't have to break up like that. She wanted to go with Valkian to see and experience more things. Valkian looked at Prima's appearance and laughed. From the beginning he said he could do whatever he wanted. If Prima came along, he wouldn't have to break up with Shira anymore. So isn't that great? That said, Valkian is still a bit worried about the angels. If the next time a powerful angel comes to him, Valkian worries that he won't be able to protect Prima properly. Valkian stood up and invited Prima to accompany him from now on. Prima nodded repeatedly and agreed to go with it. But first we still have to get to the BS kingdom, then we can start the new journey. Mentioning the kingdom of BS makes Prima a bit worried, not knowing how to tell Aishira. Aishira certainly won't agree to this. Objecting, Valkian laughed and said that it probably wasn't the case. If Aishira was interested, she would come along. At this moment, Aishira and Elisabetta appeared behind them with gloomy faces. Aishira heard their entire story, as Prima feared Aishira was fiercely opposed to this trip. If this continues, it will be difficult for the princess to keep her life. Seeing them appear here makes Prima a bit confused. Apparently Aishira was discussing plans for the trip with Elisabetta. Elisabetta could only smile wryly. It was true that they were discussing a plan. But Aishira couldn't leave Prima alone with her son, so she ran out here to check. After that, Aishira with a gloomy face warned Valkian not to seduce the princess anymore. As Princess Aishira's guardian, it was impossible for that trip to take place. Seeing Aishira press Valkian, Prima quickly explained that this was Prima's idea, not Valkian's. At this moment, Valkian turned on Aishira. Prima was not an object. Valkian knew that Prima's status was very noble. But Aishira's excessive worry always depressed Prima. But Valkian still had to advise Aishira to calm down. Don't impose your life on others. People only have one life, so as long as they live, they can comfortably enjoy their lives. As for the angels, Valkian laughed and didn't need to worry, promising Aishira that if anyone came looking for him, he would still kick his ass, so just relax and enjoy this adventure. Alzhera didn't want to listen anymore, with her own reasons and her promise to protect the princess. Aishira could not let the princess fall into danger, and if Valkian still wanted to lead the princess away, he had to step over her body first. Aishira rushed to attack Valkian. Prima wanted to stop her but Elisabetta had already held her back. Aishira rushed up to hit Valkian continuously. No matter how Valkian wanted to explain, she didn't care. To Aishira, the princess's safety is the most important thing. To fully protect Prima, it doesn't matter if she is hated by the princess. Aishira rushed forward and shouted, reminding Valkian to swear, swearing to protect Prima with his life. Valkian understood the meaning and always grabbed Aishira's sword and swore with his blood to protect Prima with his life. That's enough for now. Aishira walked up to Prima and knelt down to apologize. She knew that if she did too much, Prima would only hate her more. Now that Valkian has become Prima's new guardian, Aishira's work will end here. Prima recalls old times with Aishira. She has already sworn loyalty to Prima. If Aishira was no longer Prima's guardian, Prima wouldn't want to live. Aishira was extremely touched by this and hugged the princess, so the problem between them was resolved. Elisabetta reminded them to go to sleep. They had an early departure tomorrow morning. The next morning Elisabetta took everyone to the boat. On this journey they could freely run around the boat. But Elisabetta had to remind them many times, once they arrived at the BS kingdom, they had to hide. Because they were illegal immigrants, Elisabetta had to do that to protect their safety. Now you can comfortably enjoy this trip. Valkian climbed out of the tunnel and looked at the sea for a long time, making Valkian very excited. Is this what it feels like to be on a boat? Plus this beautiful ocean view, it was his first time experiencing this. While sitting and enjoying the Prima sea breeze, I marveled at the bustling trip until now. As if it were a joke, Valkian interrupted Prima, always correcting her that Prima's trip was just starting now. Tell Prima his plans. After taking Prima to the BS kingdom, Valkian will go on an expedition around the world. After understanding everything, Valkian promised to come back and take the princess to explore with him again. Meanwhile, Elisabetta feels something is not right. The wind today is very tense. Right now, someone shouted to inform her that there were 5 angels coming straight here. Elisabetta quickly reminded the crew to get into a fighting position. The angels' target was the Prima group, they couldn't let them harm them. It's time to show them the power of the BS Kingdom Navy. The 5 angels aimed straight at Valkian and the princess. Looking at their faces, Valkian suddenly realized that they looked very similar to the fat angel from before. As for Elisabetta, she immediately realized that these guys were fake angels, mass-produced by the church to use for attacks. If it's a fake, then there's no need to worry, Valkian exclaimed, and Elisabetta reminded him not to let his guard down. Because even though they were fake angels, they were still very strong. Elisabetta quickly ordered the crew to fire artillery at them. But the fake angels didn't do anything. One of the 5 rushed to attack the guard ship. Their speed was too fast. Elisabetta shocked everyone's spirit, then reminded Valkian that if he didn't want to die, he should retreat inside immediately. But Valkian didn't hear him raise his hand and shoot a fire bullet, instantly defeating a fake angel. This made Elisabetta gasp in surprise. Thanks to the firebird Hinokagu lending her strength, Valkian was now much stronger. One blow is enough to defeat those fake angels. As far as Valkian knows, his fire can be much stronger. This is your chance to test them out. Looking at the burning fire in Valkian's hand, Elisabetta and the crew gasped. They all realized that this was fire from hell. But the magicians guarding the gates of hell died 1,000 years ago, so why the hell is Valkian still alive? In addition to that, the magic weapon attached to Valkian's hand, this must be the magic weapon unique to magicians. It was the first time Elisabetta saw this thing, previously only hearing about it in history books. Suddenly a voice rang out behind them. Because the BS Kingdom has fallen angels, information about angels in the BS Kingdom is really rich. This was the first time he had seen a demonic weapon. It was truly a waste of time to come here. Valkian and everyone were startled and turned around to look. Why the hell was there a stranger on the ship like this? He had been sitting there for some time. He was pleased to introduce himself as Raffle. The leader of the 12 angels came here to capture Valkian. Aishira was startled and quickly reminded the princess to retreat immediately, as if afraid from the beginning that there would indeed be a high-ranking angel coming here to capture Valkian. Elisabetta walked up to Raffle, the first time they met, wondering if she could help him. Raffle ignored their presence, because he was only interested in the Valkian mage, and reminded them not to stop Elisabetta from sticking a gun in his face. This is impossible because this is her boat. She is the captain, so she cannot let her distinguished guests be in danger. Elisabetta ordered everyone to shoot, but the bullets stopped just before hitting Raffle. Looking at the bullets made Raffle laugh. It's been 1,000 years since humanity was able to create some powerful weapons. But this was not enough to reach the angel. He returned all the bullets to Elisabetta. The appetizers are here. Raffle comes in front of Valkian. Now let's start the main course. Raffle noticed that Prima had an order that was still valid. After dealing with Valkian, it was Prima's turn. Shira the dog rushed up to attack him, but it was useless. This guy was too strong. This made Valkian really angry. Remind Aishira and Prima to find a place to hide quickly. He will kick this bastard's ass. Taking this opportunity, Raffle very generously told Valkian about things he was often curious about, such as magical weapons or hellfire. But Valkian doesn't need to. If your fire can defeat him, then that's more than enough. There's no need to say anything more. Valkian fired a fire bullet at Raffle's face, but his fire bullet could not touch him. Because the element this guy uses is wind, it blows away all of Valkian's fire. Raffle happily rushed in front of Valkian, telling him that angels were originally created to deal with hellfire. He used a move that sent Valkian flying over the escort ship. Everyone quickly ran to help Valkian, but he chased him away. Because they were around him, they were only in more danger. Looking at the magic weapon in Valkian's hand, he still didn't know how to deal with this angel's wind. His fire spell bullets couldn't touch his body. The guy Raffle didn't give Valkian a chance to think. He rushed forward to attack Valkian again, a slashing move straight into Valkian's stomach. Raffle has collected all of Valkian's intelligence data. He knows that Valkian is very good at close-range combat, so he keeps such a distance. Furthermore, Valkian's fire can only be released at a certain distance. Humans don't know how to fly, so Valkian can touch him now. Valkian immediately recognized the intelligence. He must have gotten it from the angel Marcel. At first, Raffle heard that Valkian was a strong magician, so he needed to be so careful. But in the end, it seemed he was worrying too much. Valkien's face turned pale. With just a few blows, he realized that the difference in strength between him and Raffle was too great. Not only is he good at fighting at long range, but his wind damage is also incredibly strong. Raffle saw Valkien so worried and laughed. He didn't know if Valkien was okay or not. But enough of killing time like that, he'll let Valkien play a game. The rules are very simple. Raffle raises all the surrounding ships into the sky. Every time Valkien takes a hit from him, he will destroy a ship. There is a total of 1 main ship and 2 guard boats. He will let the boat with the princess on it go last. Valkien shouted angrily, but he was even more pleased. This was the face of a low-class person. Now let's start the game. If Raffle receives just 1 hit, he will admit defeat, and promise to never return to look for Valkien again. Otherwise, if Valkien gets hit 3 times, everyone will die. Valkien began to think about having a total of 3 ships, as Raffle had promised he would leave the ship with the princess for last. Because of the oath, Valkien only has 2 chances, and cannot afford to take any hits. Since every ship has lives, he must stop this guy Raffle. First, he had to let go of those ships. Valkien rushed to attack Raffle. He created a few wind birds to attack Valkien. Because wind is an shapeless object, fire cannot burn them, so Valkien can only try to block the attack. After observing him, Valkien guessed that Raffle's wind came from his hand. If that's true, then you just need to cut off this joint of his. Valkien tried to get close to him, paying close attention to Raffle's hand as he struck, but somehow he still got hit. The Raffle guy laughed out loud, thinking that Valkien was too stupid. The wind must be extremely free. He was waving his hand like that just to fool Valkien. According to the rules of the game, Valkien took 1 hit. Raffle sank a ship immediately. Now that there are only 2 ships left, Raffle reminds Valkien to be more serious. This guy treats human life like trash, making Valkien unable to understand what he did to make him do such a thing. Hearing these words made Raffle burst out laughing. There was no reason why his strength must have been growing for a long time, so he wanted to fight Valkien a bit, but it seemed Valkien was a bit out of his element. Suddenly, Raffle appeared behind Valkien. He was startled and turned around, only to be tricked by this guy once again. That was just a skill. The real self had already rushed to attack Valkien. Valkien took another hit. Now there was only 1 ship left. But Raffle was so bored. Valkien was too advanced for him, so he couldn't even dream of hitting him, so he ended the game here. Raffle sank the princess's ship. In front of Valkien, he couldn't do anything to him. Valkien was completely helpless and did not have the slightest resistance against this angel. He is too strong beyond Valkien's level. Valkien's fire is completely useless against his wind. Valkien's ship was sunk and then gradually sank into the sea. Deep inside Valkien's heart was an extreme torment. He had promised to protect Prima, but this incident happened. Suddenly Valkien was pulled into another dimension. There was a woman already sitting here waiting for Valkien. She continuously praised Valkien's will to protect his beauty. Because the girl he adores without caring about his own danger, this is truly the most manly man in the world. The woman began to curiously ask Valkien, not knowing when his love for Prima began. Valkien's face was full of confusion. Where did this lady come from and be so rude? Auntie, the woman shouted angrily at Valkien, introducing herself as the queen of level 2 Hellfire. Forcing Valkien to call her Ice Queen Avolia. Avolia was very angry and took the trouble to come out. Lend Valkien your power and yet be so disrespectful. Valkien interrupted her, thinking that if she was the queen of Hellfire, she must have known the Firebird. Mentioning that Firebird made Avolia even more angry. They didn't seem to like each other very much when Avolia even wanted to cut off relations with him. But let's leave this aside for now. Avolia admires Valkien's will and wants to lend Valkien his strength. Valkien immediately refused. He only dared to accept her kindness. Because only when fighting that guy Raffle, Valkien's fire cannot reach him. No matter how strong the destructive power is, if it doesn't hit, it's meaningless. This makes Avolia feel that Valkien is very shallow. It is just the fire of that Firebird. Her fire is on another level. If Valkien can comprehend it, she will be able to expose that angel. Avolia made a contract to lend Valkien his power. This is in Valkien's mental world. You're not dead yet, so you still have a chance to do it again. Meanwhile, Raffle was sitting bored, probably not interested in the match at all. Because Valkien was too advanced, he was about to return to the angel church to announce the news when suddenly his whole body trembled. What the hell was going on? He was startled to realize that the sea had frozen. Valkien slowly walked in front of him, letting him know that this was level 2 of Hellfire. The icy fire match just now was just a warm-up, now it was the main show. Valkian reminded him to prepare himself mentally. Valkian's entire body emitted a much more intense fire than just now, making it difficult for Raffle to understand what it was. Valkian himself didn't know this, Evolia just lent it to him. Now it didn't matter what it was. Valkian was ready to kick Raffle's ass and he was very confident he wouldn't be able to touch him again. The name Raffle plays very well and still doesn't know any information about this fire. He jumped into the sky to seek more information and then returned later with the belief that humans cannot fly. Valkian has freezing fire, but if he can't touch him, it's useless. Raffle turned around and suddenly an ice staircase appeared in midair, making him startled and surprised. This was created by Valkian. How the hell could he create a path in midair? Valkian remembers clearly what his aunt Evolia taught him. Her fire can freeze everything. Even water vapor in the air is no exception. Even if the opponent is an angel who rules the sky, he will still charge him. Valkian rushed forward and grabbed his wing, pulled him back and punched him in the face. Even when Raffle built a wind wall to block it, Valkian still punched through. Valkian gave Raffle another shot, trying to calm down. The previous phase was just a fluke. The key was that he could fly and Valkian not only needed to stay away from the ice path he created to escape. But Valkian already knew his intentions. Valkian grabbed the door just now and there must have been a reason for it. Raffle's wings froze instantly, making him unable to fly any further. Valkian rushed forward and punched him straight in the face, forcing him into the sea. Valkian declared straight to Raffle's face, he can fly fast but only needs to give him one fulcrum. You could punch him in the face. Valkian's statement made Raffle very angry. He was sure that Kian had heard the news from Marcel, that angels of level 8 and above all had their own sacred weapons. Raffle created 3 divine spears. This is his divine weapon that should completely eliminate the idea of going back to find information. In the name of the 12 archangels of the angel church, he declared that he would take down Valkian right here right now. Valkian just smirked. Just as he wanted, come and admire the power of extremely cold fire. Raffle is very confident in his magical abilities. As long as he defends seriously, Valkian can only dream of touching him. Valkian jumps in the sky, you just need to imagine it to create an ice path. This way, there won't be any movement restrictions, the key still lies in those wind injuries. If it were a divine weapon, it would be very troublesome, its power is very strong. Even if Valkian uses extremely cold fire to attack, it would be useless, we must find another way. Raffle was still boasting about his divine weapon. This spear created from wind was a real weapon created by a high-ranking angel. Each spear has the power to destroy an entire city, so slowly enjoy it. Raffle controlled the spear to attack Valkian. Valkian immediately created a whale from ice, trying to block the attack but couldn't. 2 spears rushed forward and shot straight at Valkian. Raffle laughed loudly, thinking he had hit Valkian. But Valkian did not capture these 2 spears, as Raffle had just shared that his divine weapon was created from the wind and had become a real weapon. So Valkian can freeze this thing. Valkian pours extremely cold fire into his 2 spears and smashes them to pieces. Raffle looked at the 2 destroyed sacred weapons in front of him and was very angry, but he still had to try to calm himself down. There is still one more sacred weapon that still has a chance to defeat Valkian. Learn from the 2 spears just now. All he had to do was attack at long range so Valkian wouldn't be able to touch him. At this moment, he discovered that his stomach was a little ticklish. Looking down to check, he saw that there was already an ice chain wrapped around his abdomen. This chain was created by Valkian from ice. As said, Valkian is confident in his speed, he is many hours faster than Raffle until the end comes. Valkian pulled out his extremely cold fire magic weapon, yanked Raffle towards him, then kicked him straight in the stomach. This chain wrapped so tightly that Raffle could not escape. He took a full blow from Valkian and immediately collapsed. Valkian had finally defeated the powerful enemy, but he was not happy at all because he had no one else to show off his achievements to. Meanwhile, someone was standing in the sky observing Valkian's battle. Watching Valkian fight made Evolia very excited. It wasn't long before Valkian was able to fight so eye-catchingly after only touching the extremely cold fire. This made Hinokagu the firebird remind her that she was no longer young, and kept doing such childish things. Evolia didn't care, he just reaffirmed that his extremely cold fire was stronger than Hinokagu's fire. Hinokagu also did not give up and jumped back immediately. It was far from being stronger because Valkian had not yet mastered it. And Valkian now sits dejected on the beach, suddenly losing his loved ones. Valkian didn't know what to do next. Right now something very strange suddenly fell from the sky. It exploded around, making Valkian startled to realize. This is where the fire came from, this is definitely not Valkian's fire. A voice rang out calling Valkian, a beautiful angel floating in the sky called Valkian. She witnessed Valkian's entire battle with Raffle, and since when did she hold Raffle up in the air? At this time, Raffle woke up and saw Mashol saving him. Raffle was deeply moved. Mashol angrily shouted straight at him. As a member of the 12 Angels of the Holy Church, he suffered a humiliating defeat like this. Just prepare yourself when you return to the church. According to the rules, Raffle will be demoted to 7th position, then Raffle's throat will be blocked. Enough of the small talk, she solemnly introduced herself to Valkian as Michael, one of the 12 angels of the church with the power of fire. Remind Valkian that she really wants to compete with Valkian to see which is hotter, the fire of angels or the fire of hell. Valkian was startled and thought she wanted to fight and took a defensive stance, but it wasn't just a warning to Valkian. Michael's mission now is to bring this idiot Raffle back to take the blame, so the next time they meet Valkian will be when they resolve their injustice with each other. Swear to Keem that next time her fire will extinguish Valkian's fire, so until then, live the best you can. She turned around and left without giving Valkian a chance to wonder. Valkian stood there looking dumbfounded as if he didn't understand anything. He had clearly defeated that guy Raffle. Since when did she bring him up to the sky? Right now something came up from the sea. Something very large appeared in front of Valkian. He was a bit stupid so he didn't know this was a boat and was about to punch it. At this moment, Prima jumped from the boat and hugged Valkian. Luckily, he was okay. Elisabetta on the ship laughed loudly, not expecting that Valkian could actually defeat that high-ranking angel. As expected, the princess's bodyguard was not an ordinary person, and then Valkian began to be curious about the ship. This is a specially made submarine of the Royal Navy. Elisabetta always keeps it below the main boat for emergencies. But they also need Valkian's help to distract Raffle so they can retreat safely. Prima now burst into tears and hugged Valkian tightly. She was very scared, not because of the angel, but because Valkian would die in front of her. It is much more fearful than anything Prima has ever experienced. Then they brought Prima and Valkian onto the boat. Elisabetta wondered about the battle just now. It would have been a waste not to witness it. Just now Elisabetta had planned to bring the submarine to the surface, but all the water had frozen. Elisabetta knew that was not the angel's characteristic, so it could only be made by Valkian. Valkian laughed and apologized to everyone that it was his doing, but because he was not used to using his new ability, the freezing range was a bit wide. Using fire to freeze Aishira, who jumped out of gear in time, Valkian was a bit worried about the condition of Elisabetta's wound. There's no need to worry about this anymore, now that Prima's healing ability has completely healed all wounds. The crew now ran to inform them that the whole group was about to dock at the BS Kingdom. Valkian was clearly excited and asked Elisabetta, after disembarkation, to take him around to eat something delicious. Elisabetta immediately refused. As said before, they were entering the country illegally and could not run around but had to go to the meeting point. The 7th Prince of Gush will wait for them there to respond, then return to remind Aishira to be careful with her words. Because after all, the 7th Prince Gush is Prima's fiancé, even though Aishira had already sent a letter requesting a divorce in advance. But the agreement is still an agreement, it must have approval from Emperor Gush before it can be approved. Although the road is still long, Elisabetta can only take them here. She leads the Valkian group to meet the rescuers. This person is the servant of the 7th Prince Gush who was arranged here to guide them. Prima was about to follow but was stopped by Aishira. There was no need to be in such a hurry. They should be grateful for what Aishira has helped them with. Elisabetta called Valkian and threw him a bag of items to thank him for saving her team. In here is a very beautiful gun. Easy. Elisabetta giving it to Valkian means she already considers Valkian her person. See you later. Then they parted ways here. The group followed the maid. On the way Valkian mentioned Prima's marriage. She looked very agitated when talking about this. Prima didn't hide it at all. It was just a political marriage. Since Prima left home, it was no longer valid. Therefore, Prima did not know whether Prince Gush would help them or not. The request to the Bee's kingdom was made by Aishira. She was pretty sure Prince Gush would help them. Because at a party, just looking at Gush's eyes, Aishira was enough to guess that he liked Prima. Suddenly the maid leading the way stopped everyone, letting everyone know that Prince Gush was not coming, and then attacked them with a spear straight to Valkian's chest. Because he had ice armor, he didn't care at all, which surprised her. Confirming the rumors, Valkian is indeed the one who can defeat angels, not ordinary at all. Suddenly hitting me like this made Valkian quite angry. She also knows how to choose a resting place, like what she said from the beginning, that Prince Gush didn't want to talk to Prima. If that was the case, then they wouldn't have needed to follow her anymore. She cursed Valkian straight to his face for being stupid. Their negotiations had already begun when the Valkian group set foot on the territory of the BS kingdom. This sentence made the Valkian group a bit confused. They still didn't know what she was referring to, but the meaning was from above. The 7 emperors from Gush had been observing them. This guy was very excited about Prima. Now that she has arrived in his BS kingdom, she must be welcomed carefully. Without needing to talk any further, Valkian rushed forward to attack the maid. Just one blow sent her flying, but he didn't use the hellfire. This made her think that Valkian was looking down on her. Of course, Valkian did not use it because he saw that she had no killing intent towards them. She was so angry that she wanted to continue fighting, but at this moment, the emperor suddenly appeared to stop them. It was his idea to test Valkian's strength. This is enough to pass the test, now welcome them to the kingdom. Dr. Gush welcomed them with a bright smile. Prima immediately asked about the annulment. It was clear that Gush had agreed to their request, so why did he do this? Gush didn't hide anything. He was actually very sad because the engagement was cancelled. He was so embarrassed that he became angry, so he criticized them a bit. But Valkian doesn't like this joke at all. Remind him that this is a small matter. But it was Gush who agreed to save the princess, and if that was a lie, then this should stop here. This made Gush laugh, acknowledging that Valkian was both strong and kind, then bowed his head and apologized for the rude joke he had just made. He did so only for Prima, because if he wanted to enter this kingdom, he needed a travel permit from the king personally recognizing him. And the king doesn't want to get involved with Prima, so it's a political issue. If Prima is allowed to enter the kingdom, it will have a huge impact and directly cause a collapse in national relations, so it is forbidden for Prima to appear here. Because he had promised, Gush still had to help Prima enter the country illegally, but the key still lay with the king. If they wanted to stay here, they had to make the king indebted to them. Then call Valkian, he has a favor to ask. As long as Valkian completes the task, Prima won't have to hide anymore. Gush called out 2 of his people. One was the maid who had just attacked Valkian, along with a kid who introduced this as Gush's younger brother Nia. Valkian needed to take Nia to the Red Ruby Kingdom. The maid stood in front of Valkian a bit uncomfortable. Because this was Gush's order, she only accepted to go with Valkian but still did not recognize Valkian's abilities. This is the Holy Knight Rachel, Queen Nia's fiancée. She will take on the task of protecting Nia on her journey to the Red Ruby Kingdom. Next will be Valkian's new journey with them, straight to the Red Ruby Kingdom. The next morning Valkian arrived at the dock very early. Prince Gush also arrived shortly after, apologizing to Valkian for this strange request. Valkian laughed, and it was okay because he also intended to explore around the world. Aishira was a bit confused the other day. Clearly Gush was the youngest prince of the entire kingdom, so why the hell did he have another royal brother like this now? Because this is a sensitive issue, Gush cannot say anything more. He just hopes everyone will trust him. All because of Princess Prima's freedom. It was for Prima that Valkian agreed without thinking. He thought Aishira or Priam would follow him until he completed the mission. But if not for Prima's safety, Gush would let them stay in the kingdom. For the time being, no one knows that Prima is entering the country illegally. Back to the present, Valkian said goodbye to Gush and was about to board the boat when Prima and Aishira came running. Aishira still had to remind Valkian one more time that even though he was far away, Valkian was still Prima's guardian and must not die but must come back stronger. Next was Prima. She was very sad to let Valkian go like that. Originally this was Prima's own problem, but she let Valkian take care of it for her. Valkian immediately patted Prima's head and comforted him, promising that he would return safely. Until then, they continued their exploration together. After saying goodbye to them, Valkian groped his way onto the boat. Knight Rachel and Prince Nia were already here. Russell was upset and told Valkian, this trip was too dangerous, he didn't want to go out. Since these are new teammates on this journey, Valkian wants to get to know them a bit. Rachel immediately refused to go with him. It was just an order, there was no need to waste time getting acquainted. Valkian ignored her and walked up to Prince Nia, calling to ask him to get to know him. He was startled and ran to Rachel. Rachel got angry and cursed at Valkian, reminding him again. Valkian's mission is just to lead them to the Red Ruby Kingdom, don't go near the prince for anything. Seeing Rachel hug Nia like that made Valkian laugh. This girl is no different from Aishira. Thinking back, when he met them in the forest, Aishira was also angry with him like this, so he didn't need to care about what they did anymore. Valkian is now only heading to the Red Ruby Kingdom, not knowing what interesting things are waiting for him there. Hwang Tu Nia looked at everyone on the boat and was scared. From childhood until now, except for her brother Gush and Rachel, she was scared of everyone on the boat. Nia doesn't want to take any risks at all, wanting to return home when their ship is being attacked by a sea king. Rachel is also pale. This creature is the ruler of this sea. If Leviathan enters its territory, it will be quite difficult to escape. But that was just for other people until Valkian appeared, and it was different. He used extremely cold fire to freeze it, then pulled out the gun Elizabetta gave him and shot it, and it died immediately. Turning back, I saw Nia was scared. This made Valkian laugh, not expecting Nia to be so cowardly. Rachel stopped him, always thinking that Nia was only 6 years old and that such a reaction was very normal. But Valkian still feels cowardly because when he was 6 years old, he had to survive alone in the forest. This made Rachel angry and shouted at Valkian, not to compare the noble prince with a monster like Valkian. Just the fact that Valkian was here tainted the prince. Rachel hugged Nia and encouraged her. With her here, there was no need to worry about Valkian. Hwang Tu Nia was so embarrassed that she immediately pushed Rachel away and ran to apologize to Valkian for his attitude earlier. Clenching his hands with a determined look, he asked Valkian to help him become stronger. This made Valkian laugh. Prince Gush did not tell too much about this kid. But it seems that he is a bit strong, but Valkian is not qualified to be Nia's teacher. If it's just talking, it's still okay, but with one condition: Nia is not allowed to tell this story to anyone. If she does that, Nia will forever be just a weak kid. The first lesson that Valkian teaches Nia is to put absolute trust in her teammates. Only by doing so can Nia become stronger. Nia immediately agreed, and Rachel cried again and again because she was pushed away by the prince. Next, Valkian was about to tell his journey and the perverted angels that were bothering him, but at this moment the crew member ran in to inform them. They are almost arriving at the Red Ruby Kingdom, remind them to prepare to get off the ship. So it's almost there. Valkian is eager to show up, not knowing what challenges await them. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Bees, Prima does not face the sea from above. She wondered if Valkian was still okay now, hoping that he would be okay and return to attacking her. At this time, Aishira ran over with a swimsuit and called Prima to go play in the sea. If she stays here and worries about others, it will take a long time for the princess to get better. Even though they can only stay around the BS Kingdom now, Aishira still has to remind the princess that she needs to calm her spirit right away to prepare for the upcoming journeys. Because of their own freedom, Valkian agreed to help Prince Gush. Now they won't have to worry about being in debt to Prince Gush anymore. Now let's go down to the beach and play. Aishira tugged on the princess's dress. At this moment, Prince Gush arrived with a basket of sandwich cakes that he personally made for Prima. By the way, he invited Prima to walk around the beach with him. Recently Gush saw that Prima was very sad. That's why he wanted to do something to make her happier. Prima immediately realized her mistake. These past few days she only cared about herself and forgot about the people around her to help her. Even though we only had a marriage contract, we cannot deny the kindness of Prince Gush. Prima agreed to go for a walk with him. Aishira was punched unconscious by Prima. After a while, she woke up and saw the black cat assassin sitting in her room. But Aishira doesn't care about her. Right now, she has to go find the princess, but the black cat stops her from doing the important thing in front of her. Thanks to Princess Prima's help, the black cat returned to the kingdom to find the person who gave the order to kill Prima. Something unimaginable happened. The person who gave the order to kill Prima was Princess Fine. Right now she is not okay at all, because the triad from Winder discovered this and brought soldiers to arrest Fine for daring to kill someone in the house. He only wanted to take advantage of Fine. He would not let anyone remove the order to kill Prima, but would use Fine's hand to kill Prima so that he could stand behind and swallow this whole kingdom. Things are now gradually getting out of control. Aishira heard that there were a few fallen angels in the BS Kingdom, so she immediately wanted to ask Gush to help her find them to protect the princess. Anyway, now that Valkian is not here, she must find a strong person to protect her. Mentioning the royal Prince Gush made the black cat's face change immediately. As far as she knows, in the Bees royal family there will be many candidates vying for the position of king. And Prince Gush is not out of that list, reminding Aishira to be more wary of him. The Valkian group has already arrived at the edge of the Red Rub Kingdom. To be more precise, they are currently in the desert. It's hot like this and Valkian only wears a tank top, which makes Rachel a little confused. This guy is crazy, but everything has a reason. Because Valkian is a fire-type person, these hot days are nothing compared to the hellfire he once had to endure. When I got back into the car, I saw that Prince Nia was not feeling well at all. The boy was very hot, so Valkian took a towel and injected an extremely cold fire effect into the towel to make it cool and help Nia feel less uncomfortable. Valkian then wondered when he would get to the Red Ruby Kingdom. According to the map, Rachel felt like he still had a long way to go. For some reason, they will not be able to take the main road but will have to go around the desert to approach the kingdom from the left. It is estimated that it will take up to 30 more days to reach the Red Ruby Kingdom. 30 days later Valkian faints there. He didn't expect this trip to go so deep, 30 days in this boring desert. How could he stand it? Rachel suddenly shouted, reminding Valkian not to lose concentration. Under this desert sand, there are countless species of monsters ranked A or higher hiding. What the hell is rank A? Valkian was a bit confusing, but Rachel was even more confused. Could it be that this guy only knows how to fight and doesn't know the classification of monsters? This girl has a hot temper like ice cream, so Rachel made her a cool glass of water. Right now, the beast pulling the cart also screamed fiercely, not knowing what the hell was wrong with it, but as far as Nia could see, it also wanted to drink that cool water. This monster is also a type of monster that specializes in pulling carts in this desert area, although its fighting power is only rank E. But if it weren't for it in this desert, it would have been broken a long time ago. Suddenly, a monster appeared in the desert. This was a B-level sand pig monster. Valkian didn't need to know what monster it was. He jumped up and took it down with one shot. He intended to use it as dinner, but because he was a bit too hot, it burned into charcoal. Another voice rang out and a group of people ran to arrest Valkian, because he had defeated their target sand pig all day. They introduced themselves as being from the Adventurer Guild. Rachel's face immediately changed. She didn't expect to encounter these troublesome people so soon. This group of people introduced themselves as rank 4 adventurers. Just by killing this sand pig, they would be promoted to rank 3. But Valkian intervened and turned their prey into coal like this. Valkian couldn't help but suddenly attack him, so he had to counterattack. You didn't mean to compete with them. If it's burned so black, now even a piece of the trophy you brought back as evidence no longer exists. Right now, a group member discovered that Valkian was holding the sand pig's horn. This was enough for them to prove that they had killed the sand pig and asked Valkian to give it to them. If they like it, Valkian will give it to them. The group happily left immediately, not forgetting to warn Valkian that if they met again, Valkian would not be safe. Seeing the noise, Nia got out of the car to see if there was anything interesting. Rachel immediately hugged him and apologized for causing Nia to encounter this awkward situation. Valkian was also bored without him. He thought adventurers were cool. Rachel also saw that and said it was an adventurers guild for prestige. But in reality they were all doing illegal business, work that anyone could do to make money. They are bad because they dare to do anything, Rachel reminded Valkian, so he should stop touching them and it would be troublesome. Valkian didn't care too much. As long as everyone was safe, he wouldn't touch them. The group then continued their journey, finally escaping the desert and arriving at their first town. But it was so lifeless it looked like a ghost town. Valkian saw a very large building that Rachel recognized immediately. This was the workplace of the Adventurers Guild. Now Rachel understood why everyone was hiding in their houses. Rachel wants to leave this place the day Valkian doesn't. He immediately went into that building and asked them if there was a place to stay the night. Valkian immediately met the adventurer group he just met in the desert. They were denied promotion and were very upset. As soon as I heard that Valkian was here and wanted to hold Valkian responsible, Valkian had no choice but to accept it. Because that sand pig was killed by him, they couldn't do any damage to it. This attitude of Valkian made the leader very angry. Valkian did not want to make a big deal of it, so he specially apologized to him. Prince Nia also ran to ask him to forgive Valkian, but the more he humbled himself, the more momentum he gained. This guy beat Nia's prince and Valkian also punched him in the stomach. Now there's no doubt about it. Like Rachel said, this adventurers guild is full of trash. The whole adventurer guild was extremely angry at Valkian's words. Just a kid dared to be so overbearing. Valkian quickly asked Rachel to take Prince Nia first so he could take care of this mess. Preparing to fight, a big guy appeared because it was so noisy down here. He was Muscle, the leader of this adventurer guild. Since Muscle appeared, it would be difficult for Valkian to escape, everyone thought so. The same goes for Jill. He crawled to Muscle's feet and asked him to avenge him. Muscle immediately grabbed his face and lifted him up. Dare to lie about the results of the mission and then dare to blame others. Muscle wouldn't tolerate such a coward in the guild. Jill was thrown out of the building with one punch. Then he solemnly turned to greet Valkian and called the group into his room to talk privately. Usually people who wanted to be adventurers were cold-blooded, so Muscle let them deal with each other in their own way. But hitting children alone is unacceptable, but looking closely, Muscle discovered that Valkian was not a normal person. Valkian didn't want to explain, so he added directly to the main issue. He just wanted to find an inn for them all to stay the night. Muscle immediately stopped Valkian and wanted to find an inn, which was easy, but before that he had a mission and wanted to ask Valkian to help him. To be more precise, I want to ask Valkian to help me solve a very special adventurer. If Valkian will help me, Muscle promises to provide all the necessary items on this desert journey and the most accurate map. That wasn't difficult, but Rachel wanted to know Muscle's purpose first. This adventurer is very special. She is always the one causing trouble and hitting her teammates, absent for no reason at all. If he doesn't stop her, Muscle is afraid the whole guild will be dragged down by her. Muscle can't show up for a trivial task, but if he could, Muscle would just do it in one shot and it would be over. That's why I need Valkian to do it for me, no one else can do it. Because she is extremely strong and is a master of the martial art kamikaze, her name is Kagaya. According to Muscle's knowledge, she is the person known as the strongest fighter in the world. The strongest, Valkian agreed without thinking about anything else. As promised, Muscle provided the Valkian group with a lot of necessary food for the trip. This is more than enough, no need to stop at the next town. Once again thank Muscle. Valkian did not forget to remind him to pay more attention to the people if he was a good person. Muscle laughed, of course he was still trying to do this, then gave Valkian an adventurer card. This is his adventurer card. Valkian can use this card at any association in this world. Valkian can use this card to enter the dungeon to fight monsters if he wants. Muscle is sure this will be essential for their trip. All of this was to thank Valkian for agreeing to help him with a case. Even though Rachel didn't want to, she still had to remind him. Even though he accepted the mission, it was not certain that he would meet Kagaya. Muscle knew this, but he was sure that Valkian would meet her. Because strong people are often attracted to each other, the group begins their journey along the way. Valkian was a bit curious about the special people Mr. Muscle mentioned. According to Rachel's understanding, this is a special race that was born with its own skills. It was already dark and the group stopped to camp to rest. The morning was hot and the night in the desert was extremely cold. Valkian was extremely excited to meet Kagaya. Although he has faced many strong people, he has never met a true fighter. Since Valkian learned martial arts, he has only fought with his master. If Kagaya is known as the strongest fighter in the world, then Valkian wants to fight her once. Seeing that Nia and Rachel were already asleep, Valkian groped further to see what the situation was. He discovered an oasis in the middle of the desert, and in the lake there was a girl bathing. Seeing Valkian keep staring at her, she quickly ducked down in shame. Valkian also hastily apologized, but suddenly she exclaimed, "There are many monsters around this place." For Valkian to be so calm, he must be very strong. Valkian also noticed something unusual. She was also in the middle of this dangerous desert as if she was traveling. She was definitely not a normal person. She was so excited that she didn't even bother to get dressed and jumped up to ask Valkian to fight with her. Come to think of it, Valkian still didn't understand the reason why she wanted to fight him, but couldn't stop her in time and then kicked Valkian straight in the face. Valkian was startled and quickly moved aside. Her kick shattered rocks, and it would be difficult to maintain this handsome face if she got hit. She continued to kick several pieces of stone towards Valkian. While Valkian was still busy dodging, she rushed to attack him. This speed was too fast and Valkian only tried to dodge, feeling that she was attacking him as if she wanted to kill him. Valkian quickly used Hellfire to counterattack. She immediately retreated backwards. This startled Valkian, sensing danger and immediately retreating back to regain his fighting stance. This girl's fighting ability is extremely good. She suddenly reminded Valkian not to look too much, meaning not to look at her body too much while she was still naked. But it was impossible to stop this excitement. For the first time someone was able to block her technique. So she decided to fight Valkian when she was no longer naked. Remind Valkian to wait for me to get dressed and be right back. Valkian could only smirk. Even though she was a bit strange, her fighting ability was unquestionable. Maybe he needs to be a little more serious, but he remembers his mission to protect Nia. So stop her and leave the battle here for now. You need to go back. If you let Rachel know, you'll be full of curses. This made her very sad and wanted to stop Valkian, but there was no time. They don't even know each other's names yet, so how can they find Valkian again? As he returned to Valkian, he reflected on the recent attacks, even though he was determined not to use Hellfire on humans. But just now his body unconsciously used it, otherwise he wouldn't have dared to think about the results. This was the first time in his life that Valkian felt such a desire to fight. The next morning, seeing Valkian yawning made Rachel a little curious, so Valkian told them everything about his fight with a silver-haired girl. With gray hair, Rachel took out a photo to compare with Valkian. So that's right, this is the Kaguya who Muscle mentioned in the mission that Valkian only now vaguely recognized. He wanted to go back and fight her, but Rachel refused, otherwise their main task was to reach the Red Ruby Kingdom. Although I felt a little sorry for Mr. Muscle, at this moment their camel stopped. When it saw someone's silhouette ahead, it turned out to be Kaguya. She guessed that Valkian would probably pass through this path, so she stood here and waited until she could continue last night's battle with Valkian. Nia and Rachel opened their eyes to look at Kaguya, but no matter how you looked, you could see that she was just an ordinary woman. Rachel isn't worried at all. What about the strongest martial arts master? Valkian even defeated angels, just using a little fire to win. Valkian didn't think so, took off his cloak and asked Rachel to hold it for him. This time Valkian decided not to use fire, but only to use his own strength. Valkian walked up to Kaguya to tell her that he actually had a mission from Mr. Muscle. He asked you to stop Kaguya and now it doesn't matter anymore. He wanted to enjoy this match. Both of them took a defensive stance and were about to attack when Valkian stopped them. He forgot to say his name to Kaguya yet. Kaguya didn't care about that and waited until the battle was over to introduce herself. She was in a hurry and rushed to attack Valkian, giving a powerful kick straight to Valkian's body that Valkian was still able to block. This makes Kaguya even more excited. It proves that Valkian is very strong because Kaguya's match usually ends after just one hit like this. Kaguya continued to attack Valkian even though she herself was still floating in the air. Valkian was startled and quickly reached out to block. Even though he was okay, the aftershock of the rock still made Valkian feel a bit dizzy. Knowing that Valkian was stunned, Kaguya could not miss this opportunity, aimed straight at the 3 weak points on Valkian's body and attacked. But how the hell was Valkian able to block it when Kaguya was sure she had already hit it? Valkian pulled out his magic armor and realized that while she was still in the air, Valkian rushed forward and wanted to attack. But it seems you were wrong. This girl is too flexible. She can fight everything in the air or on the ground. Kaguya laughed excitedly. As expected, she was right when she guessed Valkian was a strong person. It was the first time Kaguya experienced this feeling since she was studying martial arts with her master. However, Kaguya knew that this was not Valkian's full power. The atmosphere here was completely different from last night. If Valkian didn't want to pull out his true power, Kaguya would force him to do so. Remind Valkian to prepare himself, she is about to use her ability. At this moment, the sand surface began to shake violently. Rachel quickly shouted to remind them to leave this area. Due to their battle, an extremely powerful desert monster was awakened. A giant earth dragon emerged from the sand, making Rachel's face turn pale, while Valkian did not. The latter dragon must have been very strong. There's no arguing that, as far as Rachel knows, this dragon is a disaster. If you let it awaken, it won't be long before it will destroy everything around this place. Valkian does not take this reminder lightly. If it is strong, it must end quickly. Valkian reminded everyone to stay away from him and he would use Hellfire to defeat it, but Kaguya was extremely angry. She absolutely hates people who interfere in her battles, no matter if it's a disaster or what the hell. If he dared to take away Kaguya's joy, she would give it everything back. Kaguya jumped straight in front of the earth dragon, which made Valkian jump in surprise and jump in front of it. This girl's resilience is so strong, but even if she could bounce in front of it, so what? Human endurance has limits, and the weight difference between the dragon and Kaguya is so different that Valkian cannot imagine a scene where Kaguya defeats this monster. Just as Kaguya gave them a surprise, Kaguya's leg grew large and hit the earth dragon straight in the face. So this is her special ability, taking a direct shot and the dragon can still resist makes Kaguya quite impressive, but that's about it. To see how many more attacks it could tank, Kaguya turned her legs into whips and repeatedly swung at the Earth Dragon's face. The Earth Dragon could still endure what was expected to be an SS-class disaster. If so, then Kaguya would have to be a little more serious. Kaguya jumped even higher, hoping this monster could withstand her secret technique. The dragon also breathed fire to counterattack. Kaguya struck through that fire and split the Earth Dragon in half. The SS-level disaster monster needed an entire country's army to control it. Kaguya hit it so it couldn't react, proving that this girl is extremely strong. After defeating the Earth Dragon, now there was no one to hinder her battle with Valkian. Kaguya excitedly turned around and reminded Valkian to continue their match from earlier.